books that I physically own that I read in the past 3 months. Let's do a wrap up. Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a wrap up of the past few months. We're going to do March, April, and May wrap ups. There's a lot of books on accident because in March I read 4 books. I read 1 book on my Kindle, 1 book I did audio, and then 2 of them I read physically or on my Kindle. And then April I read 4 books. 1 book I read with audio, but I also did Kindle and like physical copy, reading it while listening to it. And then the next 3 books I did physically. And then in May I ended up reading 13 books. 21 books for the past 3 months. This month of May has been my best reading month yet, I think like ever. I'm so proud of myself. But here we go. This is going to be a rapid fire reading wrap up because there's too many books. I don't want to get into all of them. My brain's the size of a peanut, so I probably forgot most things. So I'm just going to do a basic, what I read, what I thought about it, and we're going to move on because I don't want to keep you guys here forever. So let's get started. So in March, the first book I read was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I read this on my Kindle. Started off the month. Sorry to those who love it. I love that for you. I, on the other hand, did not enjoy it. This is the second book and last book in a duology, with the first book being Divine Rivals, which I really love that book. It's like a historical romance fantasy, more heavy on the romance, not super heavy on the fantasy. The second book picks off exactly where the last book left off. So in the first book, we have our main character Iris, and she's working at like a newspaper with this guy named Roman, and they're kind of competing for the same position. Her brother had left to go fight this war for the gods, and she ends up leaving to go find her brother and to also be a reporter for the war going on. And it's a relationship formed between Roman and Iris. They have magical typewriters that they can write letters to each other, and it shows up in their like wardrobe and they could read it. In the first book, we had Roman was writing a letter and knew it was Iris at some point, but Iris didn't know it was him for the majority of the time until she ends up finding out. But they form a relationship through the messages before they actually like form one like in person. So that's the first book. The second book takes off from there. It was just kind of weird for me. It was trying to be heavy in the romance, but it was also like focusing on the fantasy part of it. But I just thought it was very underwhelming. I felt like there was not a lot of pressure. I love fantasy, high stakes, war, politics, like going at it. Anyone could die at any point. You know what I mean? This book was kind of more of a cozy fantasy, I think, to me anyways. And I've never read a cozy fantasy except this one, if you consider this one. So I just didn't really enjoy it. I just thought it was kind of dragging out. I just was like waiting for something to happen, but everything was like moving in slow motion, I felt like, for me. The relationship I wasn't as attached to at this point. And in the end, something happened and I was like, why? So I gave that book a 2-star. Did not enjoy it, but that's fine. We move on to the next book I read, which was Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I started reading Abby Jimenez, I think, this year. And I listened to all her books on audio, and I love listening to them on audio. So I read Life's Too Short by her. I gave this a 3.75 to a 4-star. I feel like the reason, too, I didn't rate this super highly was because I knew her most recent trilogy would be, like, the cake for me, like, my favorite, I was hoping. And so this book, I enjoyed it, but it's not, like, a book that I'm, like, thinking about for the rest of my life. But I did have a great time reading it, and I probably would reread all her books because I honestly just love them all so much. But this book follows our main character, Vanessa, and she is like a influencer, does YouTube videos and stuff like that. And she meets this guy, Adrian, who ends up owning like the hotel that she's living in. And the main character, Vanessa, ends up being left to take care of her sister's baby. And so they form a relationship. He's like a grumpy guy. She's like sunshine. And it's basically the relationship that forms and all the aftermath of the things they're going through personally. I feel like Abby Jimenez does really well at having people have individual things they're going through and need to work out, the male and the female, and them working towards those things, but also being able to like have a relationship and form and like work on that stuff in the relationship as well. Her books are amazing. They have so much banter, so much funniness, giggling, kicking your feet, but also like emotional, tear-jerking plot points. So I really enjoyed this book, and I would very much recommend all of her books. The next book I read was When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is a new fantasy series, romantasy series. This is the first book. It like just came out this year. I think it came out in March when I bought it. I love this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars. It could be a 5, honestly. I want to reread it before the second book comes out. Okay, so we have our main character. This book is kind of confusing at first. There is a glossary at the beginning, and I suggest using it. It's there for a very important reason. You will be lost without it. So I just keep flipping back and forth with it. But we have our main character, Rave, and she basically is like an assassin for this rebellious group, and she like kills people that are like taking advantage of the kingdom and doing dirty work. And then we have Khan is one of the kings for one of the places in this kingdom. They're like divided into like 3 different quadrants, and they're all kind of families who rule this kingdom. This book has a lot. Honestly, I suggest just going into reading it because I probably will confuse you more than I probably already have. But this book has dragons, and I love the dragons in it. I loved our main character. She was so strong and just like fighting for herself, and their relationship with her and Khan, I loved it. Enemies to lovers. It's high stakes. It's like battle heavy, politics heavy. The romance I loved. I absolutely adore this book. I think it was amazing, and I love the cover first of all. But there's a lot going on. There is a mystery involved with it that I really enjoy trying to figure that out as well. There's a lot of different parts of this book that are very interesting. We have the romance, the politics, the wars, the dragons, the mystical creatures, the mystery, the drama, everything. It was so good. And we do get both POVs in this book, and we do get more throughout the book later on, which I really enjoyed because it just added more to the mystery element. So I highly recommend. And I gave this book, like I said, 4.5 stars, maybe a 5 stars. I will be rereading this book when the next one comes out. The next book I read, Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I think I did a reading vlog for this and that one I think too. So most of these books I feel like I have reading vlogs on, a good amount of them. So you can definitely look at my videos and see which vlogs have these books in it. But next I read Bride, which is my first and only Ali Hazelwood book I've read. This is her new paranormal romance adult book. I ate it up. I ate it up. It's short and sweet. It's literally just like a mindless, fun, entertaining book. Is it life-changing? No. But I had a good time, and I was giggling and squealing and eating it up, so that's enough for me. I gave this a 4.75 stars. It follows Misery, who is the daughter of like the vampire head. Then we have Lo, who is an alpha wolf. Essentially, in the society we have humans, werewolves, and vampires, and they kind of, you know, still have their borders along between the werewolves and the vampires. They exchange like a vampire and a werewolf to go live at each other's territories in order to like keep a treaty between them. And then we end up having Misery and Lo having an arranged marriage to unite the vampires and the werers together. That's essentially it. Arranged marriage. Vampires, werewolves. There's a mystery involved too, a bit of a where is this person, what's going on. I ate it up. I love the romance. Okay. I just had a good time. It was just such a fun time. I literally flew through. I think I read it in a day. And we had a mystery, which I really enjoy. I love having different aspects involved and not just like a romance, but like, you know, we have some politics going on, some scheming, some mystery and who's done it and all these things involved with it. So I loved it. And I found Ali Hazelwood's writing to be very addictive, and potentially maybe I'll read her other books, but I really like her paranormal right now. So I need her to come up with more because I devoured it. So that was for March. I'm looking at my phone to see what books because I kind of forget. Next is April. So the first book I read in April was Beartown by Frederick Backman. This is a literary fiction book, and it's a trilogy. I do have the other two that I need to read. They're just staring at me right now. But it's a literary fiction. I listened to this book on audio while reading it, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so I was doing it on my Kindle a lot. But one of the book besties posted about the audiobook being amazing, so I got it. I love this book. This is like my first real dip, I think, into literary fiction. This is about a town that really focuses on hockey. Like, hockey is this town's pride and joy. It's like a small town, not a lot of people coming in and out, not a lot of money being put into it, except for the hockey. The hockey is what makes this town like a thing, and they're hoping to make hockey to be a way to get revenue and to get more people to come and get more money put into the town. So as a result, we have these kids who are playing hockey and have these expectations of having to accomplish these things for the town. The drama ensues. People start pushing things aside for the hockey team, looking the other way because of the hockey team, and if anyone does anything about something, if it interferes with the hockey team, it interferes with the town, and that's not okay. So lots of drama. I love this book. It was so unique. There's multiple POVs in this book, but it's not a normal book where the chapters change. It literally changes mid-chapter. Between paragraphs, you have one person's thoughts, and then the next paragraph, someone else's POV. But it worked very well for this book. I like being able to get little glimpses of all these people, but by the end of it, you feel like you actually know these characters and know who they are. Trigger warnings again for this as well. I would definitely look it up before reading it, but I really enjoyed this book. I was moved, I was emotional, and I can't wait for the next book. I was heartbroken, but I was like happy at times. It was a very moving story, and I highly recommend this book, and I will be continuing the series as well because I want to get to read them so much. I gave this book a 5-star. I absolutely loved it, and I think all the books will probably be 5 stars across the board. Amazing. But I highly recommend this book if you're looking for any literary fiction book. Like I said, it's my first one I think that I've ever read, and I fell into it very easily. The next book I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So I filmed a reading vlog, okay, of reading sad books to make me cry. And I read this book and my next book and I didn't read the third book in that series because I was not crying any of these books. So I was like, should I post it? I don't know. If you want me to post it about me talking about these books, this one and the next one more in detail, and then maybe finishing the third one in detail, let me know down below and I can finish filming that for you guys. But I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I really enjoyed this book. I'm getting more into my literary fiction, like historical books. So this one is more of a historical, taking place in France in 1714, but it also goes to present day of like 2017, I think. We have our main character, Adeline, and so in the past she was about to get married off. She didn't want to get married off, and so she ends up making a deal with a god to essentially be free and to not have to marry this person. And so as a result, she ends up striking this deal, which leaves her to where she can be with people and form a relationship with them, but once they leave or they don't see her anymore, they completely forget who she is. And so she gets to have that freedom of like doing what she wants and being free to make her own choices, but she also can't form connections with people because they forget her as soon as she leaves. And then basically what happens in this book is that she meets someone who remembers her, and he's like, I remember you. And she's like, wait, huh? And so that's what the story is. It goes back and forth between different timelines, and I really enjoyed that book. I really found this book to be really wholesome and moving because you kind of got to see like the little things in life that people take for granted, and the ways like she kind of appreciates all the little things because she's had so many years, like hundreds of years, to have to like find joy in things that weren't just people, but also her missing out on the fact that she can't form lasting connections with people. I really enjoyed this book. The ending, that's where people get emotional, but I did kind of have an assumption of how this book was going to end, and I was pretty correct on that part, so I wasn't emotional at the end. But I really did love this book, and I gave it a 4-star, I believe. I'm not the best at ratings, honestly. I'm sorry, I'm not. But I really enjoyed this book, and I would highly recommend it. I did tab a lot. There are really some beautiful quotes in this book. I found one that says, he has a way of almost smiling. It's like light behind a curtain, the edge of the sun behind clouds. More promise than an actual thing, but the warmth shines through. Like, the quotes in this were just, and this one was talking about life, and it was like her making choices, and she was just like, I don't know what choice to make, so I feel like it's too late. And then she was like, there is no violent push in one direction, but a soft nudge 100 different ways. And now all of them feel out of reach, because she's like, I wasn't just like, I want to do this one thing. It was like, there's so many little things she wanted to do, and she was like, now I feel like it's too late. But I felt that too. But it's never too late. We'll do one more. He doesn't have to lie, doesn't have to try, doesn't have to be anyone but himself, because he is enough. There's a romance between the characters in this book, but I did enjoy this book, and I would recommend it as well. Next book I read, If He Had Been With Me. Listen. If there are 2 books I wish I didn't read, it would be Ruthless Vows and this one. I'm so sorry. I read this book for the books that makes me cry, because obviously everyone and their moms talks about how this book will break you into a million pieces, okay? Because, you know, if you have been with me, but also everyone was like, you find out what happens at the beginning of the book. So with that being said, I was not shocked nor devastated by the end. Obviously it's sad what happens, but I think also I didn't really connect with the characters. So it takes place in high school, so these kids obviously are younger, and so for me, I just kind of got not as attached to it because of the things they were saying or the way they were talking or the things that were going on in this book. I just didn't connect to, and so I was just kind of like reading it and just getting frustrated or annoyed with some of the things that were happening in this book. So I didn't cry, I didn't love it. I read it afterwards and I was like, yeah, so what is that? 1 star, 2 star, I couldn't tell you. Next, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I am filming a reading vlog reading Emily Henry books. It's taken me a while because I have not read them all yet. This book follows Augustus and January. January and Augustus are both writers. Augustus writes, literary fiction, and she writes romance books. So they're both like having writer's blocks. January is going through some family stuff, and she ends up going to this house in this town, and her neighbor is Augustus, who they were rivals in college during their writing journeys and stuff like that. And they decide to end up swapping genres for the summer and seeing who could publish a book first to help get them out of their writer's block. And through that, they obviously form a relationship. You get to see both of their things they're going through in their life. These books by Emily Henry tend to be like a literary fiction with a subplot of romance in them. And I really did enjoy this book. I don't even know when I was going to rate it, because I was kind of trying to read all her books before I like rate them all, because I want to see like how the other ones made me feel by her. I will say, I feel like they're different, but I prefer like Abby Jimenez style more, because I feel like it's still hard-hitting and moving, but there's a lot more happiness and fluff and still romancy, but was still hard-hitting, moving. This one's more, like I said, literary fiction with the subplot of romance. And I do, for the sake of why I read like romance books, is as like a little escape from like my fantasy books, and like a little cleansing between series that I'm reading. And so this one, Emily Henry books, I feel like when I went into them, I thought of them as like cleansing books between books, but I feel like they're not, because they're still more hard-hitting and literary fiction wise, that it's still like, you know, you're putting in that brain power in a way for reading them, because it's not just so fluffy. And yeah, I don't really know what I'm saying, but I like Abby Jimenez books. I like to have like that fluff and that romance that's really goofy, but like still like I'm crying at a book, but it's still overall romance and heartwarming. These are too, but they're just different. And I kind of think I went into them kind of thinking they were like the same in a way of like being palette cleansers, but I feel like these are just books all on their own. Not that Abby Jimenez are a palette cleanser, because I love her book so much. But anyways, so yes, I did enjoy this book. I probably would give it a 4-star. I feel like people like love this book, like it's their 5-star read. I don't think it is like my 5-star. It wasn't like that for me, but I did enjoy it, and so I probably would give it a 4-star. And I want to continue on her books so and read them all for that reading vlog, so we can see more about my thoughts in those as well. But I did enjoy those books, and I will definitely be continuing with Emily Henry. I have all her books, so I have to. Now we're gonna get into May, my month to shine. Okay, 13 books. So we start off reading this month with a 24-hour reading vlog, and it was a great way to start because it got me powering through my books. So if you want to see those books more in detail, I do have a reading vlog. I think it's one of the most recent ones, so definitely go watch that one. But the first book I read was Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the prequel following Powerless by her, which is a romantasy series following Kai and Hayden. And so this book follows during the first book, but from a different character, which is Dina, which is Peyton's best friend, and what's going on with Dina while Peyton is going through the things she's going through in the first book. If you know how the first book ends, you know how this book ends. But I loved it, okay? There was a relationship in this that was so, like, first being such a short book and having a relationship form in this book, I don't care, I ate it up. I loved it so much. I'm so excited to see how this character plays into the next book, which comes out I think in June. If you haven't read Powerless, I highly recommend it. A romantasy series. We have Peyton, who is, they live in a society where people have magical powers, and if you don't, you're kicked out, essentially. And so Peyton has had to pretend like she has powers to, like, read the future and be like a fortune teller to survive, to live in this society. And then she lives with Adina, her best friend, and they kind of steal and, like, try to make things work because they don't have money, and they live on the streets together. And then we have Kai, who is the guard for the king and also the son, I think, of the king. And they have an encounter. She saves him, and then she's entered into these trials that happen, very Hunger Games-esque, competing all these magic rulers against each other for the winner to be given a prize. I forgot what they got. Was it like power? I don't know. I'm gonna reread Powerless before the next book comes out, is my plans, hopefully. But she's entered into that, and she has no power, so she has to try to figure out how to survive. The ending, plot twist, cliffhanger. This book is during that same time of what's going on with Adina, and I loved it so much. It was short and sweet, and I highly recommend reading the series. Next, I read Heartless by Elsie Silver. Book 2 in the Chestnut Springs series follows Cade and Willa and their relationship. If you don't know, this book is an interconnected series of cowboy romances. We have Willa, who is from the first book's best friend, and then we have Cade, who is the brother of Rhett, which is the first book's main male character. And Cade is a single dad, and he is looking for a nanny for the summer, and in comes Willa Grant. I ate it up. This is part of my 24-hour reading challenge as well, and I loved this book. It is single dad, nanny, close proximity, grumpy sunshine. There's another trope in this, but I feel like it's spoilers, so I'm not gonna say it. But I really enjoyed this book. I loved Cade and Willa. Their relationship was so... I loved it. The tension, the banter, the little moments of tension were tense, okay? And Cade's son, Luke, I adored him. He was the cutest, sweetest thing ever, and his just like out-of-pocket thoughts of just being a kid were hilarious. I love seeing the whole family. I love seeing first book's couple in this as well, and seeing the other brothers and friends who are gonna get future books. Loved it. Absolutely enjoyed this book. This is another book that I'm also like, I don't know what to rate it because I want to read all her other books to see like which ones are my favorite to rate it. But honestly, probably 5 stars, 4.75, 5. I love this book. I had such a fun time reading it. I was giggling, kicking my feet, crying, laughing, happy. Beautiful. Loved it. The next books I read are on my Kindle. I've been really wanting to read this book for a long time, and again, this is in my 24-hour reading vlog as well. Now listen, do we count these as separate or the same? Who knows? Okay, on Goodreads, they're separate. I know when you buy them on Amazon, it's a bind up, but I know when you get them on Kindle, you have to get each book separate, okay? What I read is a 5-book series, and it's called The Mind F series. Mine F series by St. Abby. If you don't know what this book is about, it's so good, but it's so random. I've seen so much hype about the series and I was like, let me read it. I fell for the hype. It is so addictive. So this book follows our two main characters. One is this girl and she is a serial killer. But it's for a reason, guys. It is for a reason. And then we have the main guy and he is an FBI agent and they end up meeting and getting like a little spark between them. And then she finds out that he is the FBI agent trying to solve her case and trying to figure out that she is a killer. So she knows that he is looking for her, but he doesn't know who she is, obviously. And it's basically that. It's 5 books. They're about like 200 pages each book. Leave off on cliffhangers. Have to keep going. I read them all in like a weekend. I was not stopping. You get both POVs in it and it's just so good. I would recommend, again, trigger warnings galore because it is dark and it is graphic at times and heavy topics because she's killing people for a reason. So I think you can kind of guess potentially what's going on, but it is dark. But I still love this book so much. I love Criminal Minds, which is what it gives. And then I love the romance aspect, shockingly. But I loved it. They were so cute together. And I love figuring out like how things were going to tie up and how things were going to go. And how revenge was going to be received. What was going to happen between them. The main male character and the female main character. What was going to happen. There was some plot twists. We got some other characters involved. It was almost like a found family too with some of the other characters in this book. But I enjoyed it so much. And I highly recommend it to anyone who's willing to read that type of book. But I feel like it would get you out of a reading slump because it's so addictive and page turning and keeps you going. But I loved it. Honestly, 5 stars for that whole series. I ate it up. So good. Next, I read Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is book 2 in the series. This is the last book that is currently out. But this is a second book following the first book, Fourth Wing. It follows dragons, Violet, and Zayd, enemies to lovers, different colleges like War, the Scribe, all these things. It's giving very much Divergent, if you would. I just finished filming a finishing books and series I'm in the middle of, so this would be more in depth than that one, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But I enjoyed this book. I listened to it on audio. Not an absolute favorite series. I like the first book more. I did enjoy this book, but there's a lot of information that I feel like went in and out of my ears. And the audiobook really helped me to finish this book. But again, there's a cliffhanger at the end and a plot twist at the end that I will be continuing the series most definitely. But I do love our characters. I love the found family. I like the politics and the war aspect. It did get confusing. I did forget a lot of people and places and names, but I had a good time. So I probably would give this like 4 stars, I think. 3.754. I don't know. I did enjoy it and I will be continuing on with it, but it took a lot more brain power and time and energy to read this book than the first book. But I do love the dragons in the series so much. The dragons, chef's kiss. Next, in that last reading vlog I just told you about, I also read Two Twisted Crowns. I really enjoyed this book. This is the second and last book in the Shepherd King duology. This book takes place right after the first book, One Dark Window, but it follows different characters but in the same story, and the 2 stories like intertwined throughout this book. I will say this was a very perfect conclusive end to a duology. Like I said in that vlog, I read the first book and this book very far apart, so I forgot a lot of things, so I had to read a review on the first book to remind me of things that happened for this book. So I would recommend reading them back to back. They're obviously not super long, so I think I would have had more of an enjoyable time doing it and more attachment to the characters. But I did enjoy this. I enjoyed both romances that were in this series. I like the first book. We have our main character, Elspeth, and she has this thing called the nightmare living in her. We find things out about it and it's playing a big role in this book. So I love seeing how that ties in with all the stories, the plot twist, and how things are going to work out in the end. And I did enjoy this book a lot. I probably would give it like a 4.25, 4.5 range. Again, not an absolute favorite series. Again, I read them apart, so I feel like maybe back to back I would have enjoyed them a lot more. But I did really enjoy this series. I recommend it to everyone. It's very good. It's a gothic, fantasy, romantasy series. Okay, the last few books I read. Next, I started Abby Jimenez's newest trilogy, Interconnected series, and that is, I read Part of Your World, which I had listened to. I listened to Part of Your World. I loved it. This is why I wasn't sure about the first series, how high to rate them, because I knew the series I was going to love more, and I do. This series, so good. 5 stars. 5 stars. We have Alexis, who is an ER doctor, and then we have Daniel Grant, who's like the mayor of this small town, and Alexis ends up going into the small town, and she gets like a flat tire, and he helps her pull her out, and then they end up meeting at the bar in this town and having a little meet cute. I love this book. I love the medical aspects of this trilogy because a lot of the characters in it are doctors who work in the hospital, and I love that because I was pre-med and I want to work in the hospital as an SLP, so there's that. But her men are the sweetest, kindest, most caring people ever. They do the littlest things for their girls because they listen and they just want to show them that, and they do it because they want to do it and make them happy. And I love it. My battery's gonna die too. We need to get this finished. I love this book. I would recommend it to everyone. I love her audiobooks, like I said before. Like I said, both these characters have their own things that are going on in their personal lives that they're trying to get through, and then their relationship also, and them working together and supporting each other. I loved it. The ending was so good. I cried multiple times in this book. I loved it. There are family drama going on with Alexis, and there's also family drama going on with Daniel. And the way these things come together and they work out is so beautiful and sweet. And I love their relationship so much. This book is also kind of like a one night stand, turns into just like a hanging out, and then like, wait, do I like him? Do I like her? And I love it. I love her men because once they know they like the girl, they're all in. They're all in. Nothing's stopping them. They're all in, and I adore that with my whole heart. I would recommend her books a million times over. Her audiobooks are amazing, and I cannot wait to finish all her books. But I'm sad also because I'm gonna be done with her books. Please go read it. 5 stars. Next, I read Keeping 13 in a reading vlog that's out before or after this. I'm not sure, but I finished it, guys. I'm so happy. 6 stars, 5 stars, loved it, adored it, everything and more. This book follows Johnny and Shannon. This is their last book and the second book in the Boys Atonement series, but the first 2 books, Biting and Keeping 13, follow Johnny and Shannon. Look up trigger warnings because there's a lot going on in these books. It's very heartbreaking, emotional, pain-inducing, but happy, found family, sweet, joy-filled moments, okay? But this is their last book, and I absolutely adored it with my whole heart. I love the Kavanaughs, Johnny's family. I love Shannon's little siblings. I love the found family in this book. I do go more in depth about it in my reading vlog, so go check that out. But I adore this series. I cannot wait to continue on with Joey and Aoife's story. 6 stars, 1,000, one of my favorite series of all time. Now for the last 2 books before Valerie dies. I read Expiration Dates by Rebecca Surley. This is a book I buddy read with my friend. Probably more in depth about this in my other reading vlog coming soon, I think. But this book follows our main character, I can't remember anything, Daphne, and she ends up getting these letters whenever she dates someone or meets someone, and it tells her the name of the person and how long she'll be with them. And so essentially she goes into these relationships knowing how long they're gonna last and trying to deal with that, what it means, the things going on in her personal life. I don't wanna say much because I feel like you have to read it to find out. I did enjoy this book. Not a favorite, not obsessed, but I mean, I read it quickly. It's a short book, and I enjoyed it. It was sweet at times. I do have like dog-eared, I'm so sorry, pages of like quotes that I enjoyed from this book, but not like an all-time favorite, but I would still recommend to people. It's probably like a 3-star read. I enjoyed it. A big part is that she gets a letter saying a person's name with no end date, and so she's like, oh, this is the person. So it's her trying to figure out that and figure out like, is this the one? What does it mean? What about the other relationships? Could it have lasted longer? Could they have been shorter? Those things, and like her life and her life choices when it comes to relationships. So I would recommend it, but like I said, 3 stars. And the last most recent book I read was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. 5 stars. I have one more book by her and then I'm done. This is like one of the top authors that I've ever felt like I'm sad that I'm gonna be done with her books, but I also need to read them because I want to get more of her books in. This book follows Brianna and Jacob. Brianna is best friends with Alexis from the first book, Part of Your World. They are both ER doctors. He transfers to her hospital to work as an ER doctor, and she's already there. And they end up kind of being like rivals because they end up both kind of competing for the chief position at this hospital. And he has a bad rap of the way there's a lot of deaths that occur on his first day at work, and the way he kind of treats people. People are like, Mr. Death, we don't like him. And then she's also like, I can't stand him, he's so rude, blah 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 blah. Turns out he has anxiety and he has a hard time communicating with people when he's stressed and anxious. And this book is so good, guys. It is so good. The way Brie finds things out about Jacob and the way they interact, something happens to where they're kind of like put on the wrong foot, and so Jacob writes her a note, and that's where they kind of pass back and forth notes with, you know, sincerely yours truly, and how they get to know each other. And she learns things about how he copes with stuff, and he learns things about her, and they just do the things for each other that they need out of love and respect. And I just love how well they know each other and understand each other and just put in that work for the people they love. It's so good. It's so sweet, heartwarming. I listened to it again on audiobook. 5 out of 5 stars. They both, again, have personal things going on in their lives with previous relationships that they're struggling with and going through. So they end up forming a fake dating scenario going on. So good. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. My battery's gonna die. This has probably been too long, so we're gonna finish. Okay, these are all the books I read in March, April, and May. I hope you guys enjoyed this reading wrap up. Hopefully it's not too long. And leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what books you've read, what books you've liked, what books you didn't like. What are your plans for June? Happy June, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Hopefully this wasn't too long and nonsense, and hopefully the stuff I said made sense and didn't sound bad, because I don't know what I said, honestly. Alright, my brain, like I said, peanut, memory, gone. But the vibes were vibing, okay? So I hope you guys enjoyed this reading wrap up, and I'll see you guys in my next one.